Insights from the Transcript. Introduction. Amidst the clamor of everyday existence, where words often dissipate into the ether, lies a profound wellspring of discovery. Imagine if the resonant echoes of spoken discourse, subjected to meticulous scrutiny, could unveil fundamental truths about ourselves and the world we inhabit. This volume embarks on such an expedition, delving into a transcript that, on its surface, purports to distill the essence of popular self-help literature. Yet, beneath this superficial layer, a rich tapestry of core human experiences and philosophical inquiries unfurls. Our endeavor is to illuminate the foundational ideas that reverberate most powerfully within this condensed wisdom, thereby offering clarity and a more profound comprehension of what genuinely holds import. At the core of our investigation resides the concept of the key theme. These are not mere recurring topics, but the very bedrock upon which the entire discourse is constructed, the central arguments, the underlying philosophies, and the persistent questions that demand our unwavering attention. Through a painstaking dissection of the provided transcript, we aim to excavate these key themes. They emerge not as isolated fragments, but as intricately interconnected threads, weaving a narrative that speaks to the universal human condition. We shall venture into the surprising paradoxes of happiness, the often uncomfortable utility of negative emotions, the profound ramifications of our decisions, and the courage requisite to confront disquieting truths about ourselves and the world. These are the nascent seeds of the key themes that this book endeavors to nurture, offering a nuanced perspective on the pursuit of a more meaningful existence. Our journey commences with a transcript that is itself an exegesis of a widely discussed work, Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F\ck. This affords us a singular vantage point. We are not merely exploring a book, but an interpretation and distillation of its core tenets. By examining this transcript, we gain a fascinating insight into what resonated most deeply, what was accorded primacy, and how the original author's intent was perceived and subsequently rearticulated. This second-order analysis presents a unique lens through which to apprehend not only the source material, but also the very process of interpretation itself. The transcript swiftly reveals a departure from the conventional platitudes of self-help. It confronts the reader with ideas that are frequently counterintuitive, urging a reevaluation of commonly held beliefs concerning success, happiness, and personal evolution. This book is an invitation to question facile answers and to embrace complexity. The voice that permeates the transcript is one of engaging authority, seasoned with wit and a refreshingly contrarian spirit. It is a voice that does not flinch from challenging its audience, and it is this very spirit that we aspire to capture and amplify within these pages. Our exploration will unfold in distinct phases, commencing with a dissection of the transcript's initial challenges to conventional self-help wisdom, thereby unveiling the inaugural key theme, the imperative of challenging assumptions. We shall then proceed to grasp the paradoxical nature of happiness and suffering, spotlighting the key theme of embracing struggle. Subsequently, we will delve into the profound implications of personal agency, unearthing the key theme of the power of choice. And finally, we will examine how our convictions and actions sculpt our reality, culminating in the key theme of the evolution of belief and action. Each phase will build upon the preceding one, constructing a comprehensive panorama of the transcript's most vital messages. This book transcends a mere analysis of a transcript. It is an entreaty for a more profound understanding of that which truly propels fulfillment, meaning, and resilience in our lives. It is a summons to critically interrogate our own presuppositions and to embrace the complexities that pave the way for authentic growth. Join us as we unpack the insights concealed within this transcript and, in so doing, discover the profound wisdom that resides at the nexus of thoughtful analysis and universal human experience. The expedition into the heart of these key themes commences now. Chapter 1. Understanding What Matters. 1. Choosing what to care about. The ubiquitous phrase "don't give a f \" is frequently misinterpreted as a directive toward apathy, a surrender to utter indifference. This is a profound misunderstanding, a facile shortcut that bypasses the very core of a life imbued with meaning. The truth is, we are perpetually invested in something. The pivotal inquiry, therefore, is not whether we care, but rather what we elect to care about, and more importantly, why. This act of selection is not an exercise in emotional suppression, it is the art of judiciously directing our energies, akin to a seasoned horticulturist meticulously nurturing a prized harvest. To suppose we can simply extinguish our capacity for care is to disregard a fundamental verity of our being. Our energy, our thoughts, and our emotions are finite commodities. We must deliberate upon their allocation, for each moment consumed by one preoccupation is a moment irrevocably denied to another. This leads us to a potent conceptual framework, often designated the backwards law. It posits that the more fervently we pursue happiness as an end in itself, the more it recedes from our grasp. Our instinct is to elude pain and discomfort, yet in doing so, we frequently engender more of both. Conversely, when we embrace the inherent struggles that punctuate existence, when we consciously choose to invest ourselves in pursuits that entail difficulty, we paradoxically unearth a more profound and enduring sense of contentment, even joy. This law underscores the profound significance of our choices regarding what commands our attention. If our affections are lavished upon superficialities, the ephemeral approval of strangers on digital platforms, the ceaseless pursuit of fleeting pleasures, or the accumulation of material possessions, we are predisposed to a pervasive emptiness and dissatisfaction. These are not the crucibles that forge growth or lasting fulfillment. Consider the remarkable account of Hiru Onoda, a Japanese soldier who persisted in his guerrilla campaign in the Philippines for nearly 3 decades after the cessation of World War II. Convinced that hostilities were ongoing, he clung tenaciously to his orders and his sense of duty with an almost unfathomable resolve. For years, he subsisted in the jungle, diligently executing a mission that had long since become obsolete. His dedication, discipline, and commitment were extraordinary. Yet, his entire existence was a testament to the pursuit of a fundamentally flawed objective, anchored in a reality that had irrevocably transformed. Upon his eventual surrender, he emerged as a man adrift in time, his immense efforts culminating in a life of profound isolation and a disquieting estrangement from the world. Onoda's narrative serves as a stark admonition regarding the devastating repercussions of dedicating one's life to a misplaced value or an anachronistic goal. It illustrates that even the most strenuous exertion, when misdirected, yields not triumph, but a profound sense of waste and regret. His commitment was monumental, but his chosen cause was a spectral illusion. This brings us to the crux of the matter, discerning what constitutes a good value or goal and distinguishing it from its bad counterpart. This discernment transcends mere subjective preference. It necessitates the alignment of our endeavors with that which is authentic, constructive, and within the purview of our influence. Good values are fundamentally reality-based. They acknowledge the world as it is, rather than as we might wish it to be. Furthermore, they are socially constructive, meaning they contribute positively to our communities and interpersonal connections rather than fostering discord or inflicting harm. Finally, good values are immediate and controllable. They focus our attention on that which we can actively influence and effectuate in the present moment, rather than on distant, uncertain outcomes or circumstances entirely beyond our dominion. Let us examine some illustrative examples. Honesty stands as a good value. It is reality-based, acknowledging the existence of truth. It is socially constructive, fostering trust and fortifying relationships. And it is immediate and controllable, empowering us to choose truthfully in our daily interactions. Conversely, consider the value of seeking constant validation from strangers. This is not reality-based, as external affirmation is inherently capricious and unreliable. It is not socially constructive, tending to foster superficial exchanges and an emphasis on outward appearances at the expense of genuine connection. And it is certainly not controllable. We possess no inherent power to compel others' approval. Another manifestation of a bad value might be superstition, such as the belief that a particular action will conjure good, fortune or avert misfortune without any rational underpinning. This is divorced from reality and frequently precipitates irrational behavior. Similarly, a socially destructive value might involve the active endeavor to undermine others or propagate gossip. Such actions corrode relationships and communities. Values that are neither immediate nor controllable, such as yearning for a lottery win or hoping for world peace to spontaneously materialize tomorrow without any personal involvement, also represent poor choices to guide our efforts. They invariably lead to disappointment, being predicated on chance or external forces beyond our purview. The contemporary world, with its incessant deluge of information and meticulously curated imagery, actively conspires against our capacity to judiciously select what warrants our care. Social media, in particular, presents an unceasing parade of others' highlight reels, engendering feelings of inadequacy and an insidious pressure to conform. We are inundated with advertisements dictating what we ought to desire, what we ought to embody, and what supposedly guarantees happiness. This external cacophony can effectively drown out our own internal resonance, obscuring our ability to discern what genuinely matters. Consumerism propels us toward the acquisition of more, often perpetuating a cycle of dissatisfaction as novelty wanes and the allure of the next new possession beckons. To counteract these pervasive influences, we must cultivate a conscious attunement to our own internal compass. This entails a deliberate interrogation of the messages we receive, both from the external milieu and from our own nascent impulses. It requires us to ask ourselves, is this something I genuinely hold dear, or is it merely something I have been instructed to value? Does this resonate with my understanding of reality and my aspiration to contribute positively? Is this something I can actively pursue, or am I chasing an ephemeral phantom? A tangible step a reader can initiate today is to establish a value journal. For a week, dedicate each evening to briefly recording 3 matters that occupied your thoughts or concerns that day. Subsequently, for each entry, pose the questions: was this a reality-based concern? Was it socially constructive? Was it immediate and controllable? This unpretentious practice serves to elevate unconscious priorities into conscious awareness. Another actionable strategy involves identifying a specific domain where you perceive yourself expending considerable energy with negligible meaningful outcomes. This could encompass a relationship, a personal project, or even a persistent worry. Once identified, interrogate whether the underlying value you are pursuing within that domain genuinely aligns with our definition of good, according to our established criteria. If not, contemplate what a more constructive, reality-based value might be applicable to that particular situation. A third practical course of action is to actively seek out experiences that present a controlled yet meaningful challenge. This might involve acquiring a new skill, volunteering for a cause that resonates with your convictions, or undertaking a demanding yet rewarding task in your professional life. These experiences, wherein you consciously embrace the struggle and accept its inherent difficulties, serve as profound educators regarding what is truly worthy of our investment. They demonstrate that the perception of an experience is intrinsically interwoven with the choice to engage with it. A marathon runner does not experience the race as unadulterated suffering; they perceive it as a chosen trial, a testament to their resolve and dedication. The physical discomfort is undeniable, but the meaning they derive is a direct product of their intentionality. Ultimately, the faculty to selectively choose what commands our care constitutes the bedrock of a life lived with purpose and resilience. However, this conscious selection represents merely the initial phase. The subsequent critical element lies in comprehending why we make these choices and how our ingrained beliefs, often formed without our full conscious participation, shape these decisions. This compels us to scrutinize the very foundations of our convictions. 2. The backwards law explain. Life often feels like a relentless pursuit. We crave more wealth, more affection, more achievement, more joy. This seems intuitively sound, does it not? If a thing is desirable, then vigorous effort to obtain it should be the logical response. Yet, what if this very directness of pursuit This intensity of wanting inadvertently propels the objects of our desire further from our grasp. This is the crux of a profound insight, a fundamental truth about our lived experience, often articulated as the backwards law. It serves as a key theme in discerning what genuinely holds significance, for it challenges our most ingrained assumptions about cultivating a flourishing life. The backwards law posits that the more desperately we chase positive experiences, the more we find ourselves adrift in negative ones. Consider this: when your desire for affluence becomes acute, what becomes strikingly apparent? Your own perceived penury. The more you yearn for it, the sharper the sting of its absence. Likewise, a fervent longing for attractiveness can breed a persistent sense of unattractiveness, as you meticulously scrutinize each perceived imperfection. And perhaps most universally, the ceaseless quest for happiness can, with a cruel irony, culminate in profound dissatisfaction. This is not some cosmic jest. It is a deeply embedded psychological mechanism. The very act of desiring something intensely underscores its absence, thereby diminishing our well-being rather than enhancing it. It is akin to attempting to capture smoke. The tighter your fist clenches, the more it dissipates through your fingers. This leads us to a pivotal realization: the trajectory toward positive outcomes is frequently paved with the acceptance of negative experiences. This is the very essence of the backwards law. Rather than viewing difficulties as impediments to happiness, we can begin to perceive them as the very conduits that lead it. When we embrace the inevitability of life's adversities, struggles, and pains, a remarkable transformation occurs. The problems do not vanish, but their dominion over us wanes. This acceptance is not an abdication of responsibility or a descent into passivity, it is a strategic recalibration of perspective. By acknowledging that challenges are an intrinsic component of growth, we mitigate the shock and apprehension they typically evoke. This reduction in perceived threat liberates our mental and emotional reserves, enabling us to confront these challenges with greater efficacy. It is akin to learning to navigate a turbulent sea. Resisting the waves is exhausting and futile, but learning to move in concert with them, to acknowledge their power, allows for skillful passage. This concept finds potent resonance in the notion of not giving a f\ck, though a precise understanding of this phrase is paramount. It does not signify a pervasive indifference to all things. Rather, it denotes a deliberate choice regarding what we do deem worthy of our attention. This selective engagement is a direct manifestation of the backwards law. When we elect to invest our care in matters of true importance, our values, our personal evolution, our connections with others, we can more readily endure the minor discomforts or setbacks that accompany their pursuit. Let us dissect the three nuances of this selective engagement as they illuminate the backwards law. Firstly, comfortable with being different, not indifferent. This implies an acceptance that not all will concur with our views, that our chosen path may appear unconventional, or that we may encounter temporary reversals. Because we are committed to our chosen values, these minor divergences or obstacles do not derail us. We do not require universal approbation, nor do we need to circumvent every minor friction. This acceptance of minor negativity being distinct, facing small impediments empowers us to pursue what genuinely matters. Secondly, care about something more important than adversity. This directly correlates with the backwards law's principle of embracing negative experiences. When we possess a robust sense of purpose or a profound allegiance to a value, that commitment eclipses the immediate struggle. For instance, an athlete preparing for a marathon accepts the pain and exhaustion because their objective, completing the race, achieving a personal best, holds greater significance than the transient discomfort. They are not indifferent to the pain, they simply prioritize their ultimate goal, which necessitates enduring that very pain. Thirdly, and perhaps most directly aligned with the backwards law, is always choosing what to care about. This underscores our active agency. We are not passive recipients of life's trials. We possess the capacity to determine which conflicts are worth engaging, which struggles are worth embracing. The backwards law suggests that the struggles we choose to confront, the problems we accept as integral to a larger, more meaningful endeavor, are those that ultimately foster growth and fulfillment. If we elect to invest our concern in trivialities, we will be inundated by trivial problems. However, if we choose to care about significant, albeit arduous, matters, we find ourselves on a path that, while challenging, is ultimately more rewarding. The backwards law is not merely a contemporary psychological observation. Its origins are woven through the fabric of human history and philosophical inquiry. Consider its evolutionary underpinnings. Negative emotions, while unpleasant, serve a crucial function. Fear signals peril, prompting self-preservation. Anger can galvanize us to defend our boundaries. Sadness can signify loss and encourage us to seek connection or reevaluate our circumstances. These negative signals are indispensable for survival and adaptation. They are not to be eradicated, but rather understood and responded to with discernment. Philosophically, traditions such as Buddhism offer profound insights that echo the backwards law. The concept of dukkha, often rendered as suffering or dissatisfaction, is regarded as an intrinsic facet of the human condition. It arises from attachment, from the desire for things to be other than they are. The path to liberation in Buddhism involves accepting this reality of dukkha, rather than resisting it. By comprehending that suffering is unavoidable, and by relinquishing the desperate need for perpetual pleasantness, one can attain a deeper sense of peace and contentment. This acceptance of life's inherent difficulties is precisely what enables one to navigate them with greater wisdom and diminished distress. So, how does the direct pursuit of positive outcomes, as elucidated by the backwards law, paradoxically engender the very negative experiences it seeks to circumvent? The answer resides in the intensity of our wanting and the focus of our attention. When we fixate solely on the absence of happiness, we magnify our feelings of unhappiness. The desire for wealth transforms into a constant reminder of our current financial constraints, fostering sentiments of inadequacy. The yearning for love can render us acutely aware of our solitude. This intense focus on what we lack precipitates a feedback loop of negative emotions. It is akin to fixating on a dark spot on a white canvas. The more intently you gaze, the larger it appears, obscuring the surrounding brightness. The backwards law instructs us that by shifting our attention from the desired outcome to the process of its attainment, and by embracing the inherent struggles within that process, we can dismantle this detrimental cycle. The struggle itself, when met with acceptance, becomes the wellspring of our growth and, paradoxically, our eventual satisfaction. What are the practical ramifications of embracing negative experiences as the pathway to positive ones? Fundamentally, it reshapes our approach to problem solving and goal attainment. Instead of evading arduous tasks, we learn to perceive them as opportunities. The daunting prospect of launching a new venture is not merely a source of stress, it is the requisite hurdle to surmount in order to realize the fulfillment of constructing something meaningful. The discomfort of a difficult conversation is not merely something to be avoided, it is the potential avenue toward a more robust, more authentic relationship. This paradigm shift renders us less susceptible to paralysis by fear or inundation by setbacks. We begin to view problems not as insurmountable obstacles, but as stepping stones. We understand that genuine progress frequently necessitates discomfort, exertion, and even failure. This acceptance cultivates resilience, adaptability, and ultimately, greater efficacy in achieving our objectives. It is about cherishing the journey with all its vicissitudes as much as, if not more than, the destination. Comprehending this fundamental paradox, that the path to our desires often wins through the acceptance of our fears, is the initial crucial step in discerning what truly matters. But how do we implement this understanding? How do we transition from intellectual grasp to lived reality? The subsequent stage involves not merely grasping the law, but understanding why we so often resist it and where our misaligned priorities lead us astray. 3. Growth through negative experiences. Life often presents itself as a relentless pursuit of happiness, a journey undertaken to amass pleasant moments and meticulously avoid anything that might cast a shadow. The prevailing notion suggests that the optimal way to navigate existence is to steer a wide berth around pain, struggle, and sorrow. Yet, upon closer examination, this seemingly sensible approach begins to unravel. Indeed, the inverse often proves profoundly true. It is within the crucible of adversity, in the very moments that sting and test us most acutely, that we frequently unearth our most formidable strengths and illuminate the clearest path toward what genuinely matters. This is the domain where the backwards law truly reveals its potency, demonstrating that the direct, unadulterated pursuit of pleasure can leave us feeling hollow, while the deliberate embrace of life's more arduous passages can, paradoxically, pave the way to a richer, more profoundly fulfilling existence. Consider, for a moment, the backwards law we have briefly touched upon. Its core tenet suggests that an overzealous striving for happiness can, in fact, diminish it. This assertion may strike one as inherently contradictory, even perplexing. However, let us delve deeper. If our sole preoccupation is the chase after transient positive sensations, we may inadvertently cultivate an aversion to anything that demands effort or carries inherent risk. We might then shy away from challenges that hold the promise of profound meaning, simply because they entail a modicum of discomfort. This is akin to subsisting solely on sugary confections. They offer immediate gratification, but ultimately fail to furnish lasting energy or robust health. True growth, the kind that imprints itself upon our very being and shapes our identity, often emerges from the opposite direction. It arises from confronting a problem, a loss, or a daunting situation, and resolving to navigate through it, rather than retreating. Let us illuminate this principle with a tangible illustration. Envision an individual who has recently lost their employment. This is without question an experience steeped in negativity. It ushers in apprehension, uncertainty, and a palpable blow to one's self-worth. Should this individual choose to merely evade these distressing emotions, perhaps through incessant distraction or a facade of unconcern, they risk forfeiting a pivotal opportunity. Conversely, if they instead acknowledge the pain, the anxiety, and the disappointment, they can commence an excavation of the underlying causes. Was it a deficit in skills? A seismic shift within their industry? A performance-related issue? By confronting these uncomfortable verities, they open the door to learning. They might discover a need for new competencies, or perhaps realize that their former professional trajectory was not, in fact, the ideal fit. This arduous period, the very job loss, transforms into a potent catalyst. It compels a reevaluation, a process of learning, and ultimately, the discovery of a new path that may prove to be even more congruent with their aspirations. The negative experience, when met with acceptance, becomes the fertile ground for positive transformation, the acquisition of new skills, and a fortified sense of purpose. This is the backwards law in its most potent manifestation, transmuting hardship into a stepping stone. Negative emotions, so often relegated to the status of unwelcome adversaries to be vanquished, are, in reality, indispensable signals. Anxiety, for instance, is not merely an unpleasant sensation. It frequently serves as a potent indicator that something within our environment or our meticulously laid plans requires our immediate attention. It is, in essence, our psyche's urgent summons. Heed this. A potential issue looms, demanding resolution. Fear acts as an alarm, alerting us to peril and prompting a posture of caution or diligent preparation. Sadness, though inherently painful, can signify a profound loss, granting us the necessary temporal and emotional space to grieve, process, and ultimately to move forward. Anger, when understood, can highlight an instance of injustice or a boundary that has been transgressed, galvanizing us to take corrective action. The crucial insight here lies not in succumbing to these emotions, but in recognizing their inherent utility. When we attempt to suppress them or feign ignorance, they do not simply dissipate. Instead, they can fester, breeding more significant complications down the line. However, when we acknowledge their presence, endeavor to comprehend their message, and subsequently act upon that understanding, they are transmuted into formidable instruments of growth. Consider an individual who harbors a persistent disquietude regarding their current life trajectory. If this nagging feeling is dismissed, they may find themselves continuing on a path that offers no genuine fulfillment, leading to an ever-deepening reservoir of unhappiness. Conversely, if they lean into this sensation, probing the question, what is the root cause of this unease? They may uncover a profound yearning for a different form of work, a divergent lifestyle, or a revised constellation of relationships. This discomfort, this negative emotion, then becomes the spark that ignites a necessary and transformative change, ushering in a life of greater authenticity and profound satisfaction. Furthermore, the resolute willingness to endure hardship and undertake sacrifice stands as a potent bulwark against the insidious creep of entitlement. Entitlement is the insidious belief that one is inherently deserving of good fortune without the commensurate exertion, that life itself owes us happiness and success. This is a pervasive trap, subtly encouraged by the prevailing cultural currents, with their relentless emphasis on instant gratification and an almost pathological avoidance of any form of discomfort. When we are perpetually shielded from adversity, our sense of self can become alarmingly fragile, easily fractured by the slightest setback. We begin to internalize the notion that our comfort is paramount, and that any degree of struggle represents an unjust imposition. However, when we consciously choose to confront challenges and willingly make sacrifices for that which we hold dear, we forge resilience and cultivate character. Reflect on the athlete who submits to grueling training regimens, pushing their physical limits to the absolute brink. Their motivation is not derived from immediate pleasure, rather, it is rooted in the long-term objective of victory or the attainment of peak performance. The pain and exhaustion are accepted as indispensable components of the arduous journey. This sacrifice fosters a profound and deeply earned appreciation for their eventual triumphs. They possess the unassailable knowledge that their achievements were meticulously earned. This stands in stark contrast to an individual who inherits a vast fortune or achieves success through sheer serendipity, devoid of personal effort. While they may possess material abundance, they often lack the profound satisfaction and self-awareness that blossoms from overcoming obstacles. They have not learned to truly value what they possess because they have not experienced the intrinsic cost of its acquisition. This deliberate embrace of sacrifice constitutes a foundational key theme in grasping what truly holds enduring value. It is predicated on the recognition that life's most cherished possessions, robust relationships, meaningful vocations, profound personal growth, are seldom attained with ease. They invariably demand effort, unwavering dedication, and at times, a significant personal cost. By consciously choosing to invest our energy and endure discomfort in pursuit of these loftier aims, we actively counteract the corrosive influence of entitlement and cultivate a more robust and appreciative perspective on existence. We learn to savor the journey itself, not merely the destination, and to apprehend that profound fulfillment is often discovered within the very fabric of the struggle. Failure, an outcome so frequently feared and assiduously avoided, is in reality an indispensable partner to success. The notion that success is merely the antithesis of failure fundamentally misconstrues the intricate architecture of meaningful achievement. Every visionary inventor, every accomplished artist, every triumphant entrepreneur carries a history marked by an abundance of setbacks. These are not simply unfortunate occurrences. They are, in fact, essential conduits for learning. Consider the rudimentary process of learning to ambulate. An infant stumbles and falls countless times. Each fall represents a failure, a transient loss of equilibrium. Yet, with every tumble, the infant learns. They recalibrate their balance, refine their motor control, and deepen their intuitive understanding of gravity. They do not abandon their efforts due to a fall. Rather, they rise again and persist, integrating the lessons gleaned from each preceding attempt. This exemplifies failure as a direct constituent of both learning and, ultimately, success. In the adult sphere, this principle remains remarkably consistent across more complex endeavors. If a scientist embarks on the development of a novel pharmaceutical, they will likely conduct hundreds, if not thousands, of experiments that yield no satisfactory outcome. Each of these failures furnishes invaluable data. It elucidates what does not function, thereby enabling the refinement of hypotheses and the narrowing of potential avenues. Without these failures, the path to success would remain obscured. The transcript itself implicitly acknowledges this, stating that failure is a huge component of success. This is not merely a pithy aphorism, it is a fundamental verity concerning the genesis of mastery and innovation. By embracing failure not as a terminal point, but as a critical data nexus, we unlock our inherent capacity for learning and advancement. We cultivate adaptability and resourcefulness, rendering us better equipped to surmount the inevitable obstacles that invariably arise on the trajectory toward any significant objective. This propensity to confront negative experiences and the inherent uncertainty they engender is also inextricably linked to the broader concept of embracing ambiguity, a notion we have previously explored. When we cultivate a comfortable detachment from the necessity of possessing all the answers, and when our firmly held beliefs are subjected to the rigorous scrutiny of challenging realities, we become more receptive to learning and personal evolution. The antithesis of this is certainty, which can insidiously morph into a dangerous comfort zone. If we harbor an unshakable conviction that we are unequivocally correct, our inclination to absorb new information or entertain divergent perspectives diminishes considerably. This rigidity can foster stagnation and lead to the forfeiture of invaluable opportunities for growth. Negative experiences frequently serve to shatter our illusions of certainty. A sudden illness can profoundly challenge our deeply ingrained belief in our own invincibility. An act of betrayal can irrevocably shake our faith in those we have placed our trust. A professional setback can compel us to question the very foundation of our competence. These are undeniably uncomfortable junctures, yet they also represent potent invitations to learn. When our existing belief systems are revealed as inadequate by the stark feedback provided by reality, we are compelled to undertake a thorough re-examination. This process of questioning, of acknowledging the limits of our knowledge, is the very crucible in which genuine intellectual and personal growth is forged. Consider, for instance, an individual who steadfastly adheres to the conviction that unflagging hard work alone is the sole determinant of success, and that any individual encountering difficulties must, by definition, be indolent. Subsequently, this individual experiences a profound personal adversity, perhaps a chronic ailment that significantly impedes their capacity for sustained effort. This negative experience directly challenges their rigid ideological framework. They are compelled to confront the undeniable reality that extraneous factors and sheer fortune can also exert considerable influence, and that an individual's struggles are not invariably a reflection of their effort. This painful realization, born from a negative encounter, can foster a more profound sense of empathy, a more nuanced comprehension of the world's complexities, and a more compassionate outlook toward fellow human beings. It is through these moments of existential uncertainty, often precipitated by hardship, that we can divest ourselves of outdated notions and cultivate a more accurate and grounded understanding of both ourselves and the world around us. Given the contemporary cultural predilection for comfort and an aversion to pain, the active pursuit or embrace of negative experiences as conduits for growth may strike one as inherently counterintuitive. Thus, what practical avenues remain accessible to the individual? This is not an endorsement of seeking out peril or gratuitous suffering, but rather a call for a fundamental shift in perspective and a cultivated willingness to engage with difficulty as it arises. One actionable strategy involves the practice of what might be termed conscious discomfort. This entails deliberately venturing beyond one's established comfort zone in increments that are both small and readily manageable. If public speaking induces a sense of dread, consider joining a small group dedicated to its practice, even if the prospect elicits nervousness. If networking events are perceived as inherently stressful, commit to attending one and initiating a conversation with at least one new individual. The operative principle is to select activities that evoke a mild yet surmountable degree of apprehension or unease, and then to meticulously observe one's reactions and extract valuable insights from the experience. Another pragmatic approach involves the art of reframing setbacks. When an endeavor falters, rather than immediately succumbing to an obsessive dwelling on the negative outcome, pose the following inquiries. What invaluable lessons can be gleaned from this situation? Or what does this particular circumstance reveal about my current modus operandi? This active interrogation redirects one's focus from the sting of failure to the latent potential for insight and enhancement. It is, in essence, about treating failures as empirical experiments, diligently gathering data to inform subsequent attempts. Furthermore, cultivating a disposition of gratitude for the lessons imparted by hardship can prove profoundly transformative. This does not imply an obligation to feel grateful for the suffering itself, but rather for the burgeoning resilience and personal growth that emerged from its crucible. When reflecting upon past tribulations, direct your attention toward how they have rendered you more robust, sagacious, or compassionate. This practice serves to forge a positive association with the act of overcoming difficulty, thereby increasing one's receptivity to confronting future challenges. Ultimately, the willingness to confront and learn from our negative experiences, to exercise judicious discernment in selecting our struggles, and to accept the inherent complexities of existence is not an act of masochism, but rather the deliberate construction of a foundation built upon resilience and profound meaning. This intentional engagement with adversity leads us toward a deeper apprehension of our core values and the choices we consciously make, thereby setting the stage for our subsequent exploration. The power of choosing your values. 4. Suffering and positive outcomes. A pervasive notion suggests that happiness is synonymous with the absence of adversity. We often labor under the illusion that a life purged of all pain, sorrow, and hardship would inevitably culminate in contentment. Yet, this simplistic equation unravels under closer scrutiny of life's intricate tapestry. Indeed, the inverse frequently proves true. The experiences that yield our most profound joy and enduring meaning are often those for which we must contend with considerable struggle. To subsist solely on a diet of dessert, while momentarily pleasurable, offers no lasting sustenance. A life truly rich in fulfillment is not sculpted by the evasion of suffering, but by the judicious selection of our battles and the grace with which we embrace them as integral to our odyssey. This contemplation ushers us into a peculiar paradox, often termed the backwards law. It posits that an ardent pursuit of positive experiences can, paradoxically, lead to a diminished sense of well-being. Consider the relentless chase for pleasure. It can breed an anxious preoccupation with its potential loss. The perpetual yearning for elation inevitably precipitates misery when that state proves ephemeral. Conversely, when we acknowledge the inherent normalcy of negative experiences and cultivate a willingness to confront them, a remarkable transformation occurs. These arduous passages frequently pave the way to more auspicious destinations, fostering a depth of satisfaction that eludes those who shy away from difficulty. Emotions such as anxiety, anger, or dissatisfaction are not adversaries to be vanquished. Instead, they serve as crucial emissaries. Our anxiety might signal the necessity for preparation in the face of a looming challenge. Anger could be an indicator that a vital boundary has been transgressed. Dissatisfaction, in turn, can propel us toward essential recalibrations. These sentiments, however discomfiting, are indispensable for our survival and act as potent motivators. True accomplishment and profound fulfillment are rarely the spoils of an untroubled existence. Rather, they are the hard-won trophies that emerge from the crucible of overcoming significant obstacles. To attain anything of genuine worth, we must anticipate stumbles. Failure is not the antithesis of success. It is frequently a necessary stepping stone upon the path toward it. Without the sting of setbacks, we would remain ignorant of the required adjustments and incapable of truly appreciating our eventual triumphs. This readiness to confront suffering is intrinsically linked to the discernment of our most cherished values. If we are prepared to endure hardship for a particular pursuit, it attests to its profound significance. It signifies not a fleeting whim, but a deeply held conviction. Consider the extraordinary case of Hiroo Onoda, a Japanese soldier who, for nearly 3 decades following the cessation of World War II, persisted in his combat operations in the Philippines, convinced the conflict still raged. He endured immense privation, subsisting in the jungle, perpetually evading capture, and confronting constant peril. He bore these harrowing conditions, yet his objective was fundamentally misguided. His unwavering dedication and the suffering it entailed, though extreme, were ultimately misdirected, culminating in a life of isolation and a delayed reintegration into a world that had irrevocably moved forward. In his instance, suffering did not yield positive ramifications due to a flawed foundational objective. Onoda's experience stands in stark contrast to the concept of enduring hardship for a noble cause. Envision an individual who dedicates years to the arduous quest for a cure for a devastating illness, confronting protracted hours, frustrating dead ends, and profound personal sacrifice. The suffering is immense, but the objective, the alleviation of human suffering, is imbued with profound meaning. The willingness to bear the pain, the setbacks, and the exhaustion is precisely what imbues the pursuit with value. This is why, in its deepest sense, happiness arises from the resolution of problems. The pivotal factor is not the absence of challenges, but our resolve to confront the difficulties inherent in their resolution. Should we elect to disengage from these predicaments or attempt to circumvent the attendant discomfort, we forfeit the growth and satisfaction that blossom from their conquest. The embrace of suffering and the willingness to make sacrifices also serve as a potent bulwark against entitlement. Entitlement is the pernicious conviction that one is inherently deserving of favorable outcomes without the requisite effort or the endurance of hardship. It is akin to expecting a sumptuous repast without the necessity of procuring ingredients or engaging in culinary preparation. This mindset inevitably precipitates disappointment and resentment when life, as it invariably does, presents obstacles. Conversely, accepting that life necessitates struggle and cultivating a readiness to make sacrifices for that which we hold dear serves to inoculate us against this insidious trap. It is the distinction between desiring only the saccharine, effortless facets of existence and comprehending the imperative to eat our vegetables to confront the mundane verities and the unavoidable difficulties. The very act of sacrifice, the conscious election to endure discomfort or loss for a greater good, is what safeguards us against self-absorption. When we willingly relinquish something, our time, our comfort, our immediate desires for a cause, a loved one, or a principle, we are actively engaged in personal evolution. This readiness to bear hardship for something that transcends our individual selves is the wellspring of genuine growth and prevents us from becoming ensnared in a cycle of yearning without earning. It cultivates character and resilience, laying the foundation for a more meaningful existence. In what specific ways does this willingness to endure particular forms of suffering directly inform and validate the good values and right goals we have previously discussed? When we are prepared to suffer for something, it signifies that we have rigorously examined its worth. It is not a superficial aspiration, it is a profound commitment. If a goal necessitates substantial personal sacrifice, perhaps protracted hours of study, financial strain, or emotional distress, and we nonetheless choose to pursue it, this demonstrates an alignment between the goal and our core values. The suffering itself becomes an eloquent testament to the value we ascribe to the outcome. For instance, an individual who dedicates years to mastering a challenging musical instrument endures countless hours of practice, frustration, and the forfeiture of other leisure pursuits. This suffering validates their valuation of artistic excellence and their aspiration to become a virtuoso musician. Without this willingness to endure, the value remains an abstract concept, devoid of lived truth. The struggle imbues the goal with authentic significance, transforming it from a mere wish into a deeply ingrained purpose. In what specific ways does embracing failure, rather than evading it, pave the way to more enduring and profound positive outcomes than a path that prioritizes the avoidance of all negative experiences? The avoidance of failure often translates to a cautious, risk-averse approach. It means adhering to the familiar, eschewing gambles, and never truly testing one's limits. While this strategy may circumvent immediate discomfort, it simultaneously impedes significant growth and learning. When we embrace failure, we open ourselves to experimentation and innovation. Each failure imparts invaluable knowledge: what proves ineffective, what requires refinement, and how to adapt. These lessons are far more potent and enduring than any success achieved without struggle. A business that shies away from failure may never conceive a groundbreaking product. A relationship that sidesteps conflict may never learn to navigate deeper emotional needs. The positive outcomes that emerge from embracing failure are typically more robust because they are constructed upon a bedrock of learning and resilience. They are sustainable because the individual or entity has cultivated the capacity to surmount adversity. In stark contrast, a life dedicated to the complete avoidance of negative experiences can foster a fragile sense of well-being, easily shattered by the inevitable challenges that life invariably presents. Beyond the theoretical, what are the tangible psychological and behavioral shifts that transpire when an individual transitions from a mindset of suffering avoidance to one of active selection and endurance? As we shift from eschewing suffering to embracing it, several profound transformations occur. Psychologically, we cultivate enhanced resilience. We ascertain that we possess the capacity to withstand difficult emotions and situations, thereby diminishing our apprehension of them. Our self-esteem often escalates as we affirm our capability to surmount challenges. We also experience a heightened sense of agency. Rather than perceiving ourselves as victims of circumstance, we recognize our power to choose our responses to hardship. Behaviorally, this transition engenders a more proactive engagement with life. We become more inclined to undertake arduous tasks, pursue ambitious objectives, and articulate our convictions, even when it necessitates discomfort. We may commence establishing more effective boundaries, understanding that asserting our needs, even if it precipitates transient friction, is often preferable to enduring protracted discomfort. We also develop greater compassion, both for ourselves and for others, acknowledging that everyone encounters struggles. This metamorphosis is not about actively seeking pain, but about comprehending that pain is an unavoidable component of a meaningful existence, and that our response to it is where true power resides. This realization leads us to a practical strategy known as the do-something principle. When confronted with overwhelming problems or daunting tasks that evoke anxiety or dread, it is remarkably easy to become paralyzed. The sheer magnitude of the challenge can render us inert. The do-something principle advocates that in such moments, undertaking any action, however minuscule, can yield remarkable efficacy. This action need not resolve the entirety of the problem. It could be as elementary as making a telephone call, transcribing a single thought, or embarking on a brief perambulation. To clear one's mind, the act of doing something, of engaging with the problem in some fashion, disrupts the cycle of inertia and anxiety. It redirects our focus from the overwhelming predicament to our own latent capacity for action. This principle underscores that even when suffering appears to be imposed upon us, our choice to respond, our agency, is ultimately what shapes the outcome. It empowers us by reminding us that we are not powerless, even in the face of formidable difficulty. In essence, the trajectory from suffering to positive outcomes is not a passive phenomenon. It is an active, deliberate choice. We are not mere pawns of our circumstances, we are active architects of our lives. By understanding that adversity is not an enemy to be eradicated at all costs, but rather a preceptor from whom we can glean wisdom, we unlock the potential for profound personal growth, forge unshakable resilience, and cultivate a life replete with authentic meaning. This acceptance of struggle serves as the bedrock upon which we can subsequently construct a life of purpose, and it sets the stage for comprehending how we select our engagements, a critical determinant in living a life of genuine consequence. Chapter 2. Rethinking Success and Values. 1. Critique of Traditional Self-Help. The terrain of personal development, often rendered in broad, inviting strokes, presents a deceptively straightforward ascent to an improved existence. Conventional self-help, in its ubiquitous guise, proffers a compelling, yet ultimately illusory, panorama. It posits happiness as the supreme prize, readily procured by eschewing discomfort and amassing external accolades. This methodology, however, frequently succumbs to the fallacy of universal applicability. It presumes a shared conception of a flourishing life, uniform values, and identical aspirations across all individuals. Consider, for instance, the tomes and seminars that purport to unveil the secrets to opulence, idyllic relationships, or boundless elation. invariably framing these as desiderata for everyone. They dictate what one ought to covet, implicitly suggesting that any deviation from these prescribed desires signifies an inherent deficiency. This represents a fundamental misapprehension. Each of us is a unique constellation of experiences, endowed with distinct talents and driven by divergent yearnings. What confers profound contentment upon one may leave another utterly bereft. To insist that all should pursue identical achievements, the same degree of outward prosperity, is to disregard the intricate mosaic of human individuality. The central tenet here, which we have designated a key theme, involves a meticulous dissection of the foundational ideas and concepts elucidated in the transcript synopsis. Within this framework, the traditional self-help industry frequently champions a constricted key theme of universal achievement, a notion demanding rigorous scrutiny. One of the most pervasive tenets within traditional self-help is the unremitting pursuit of happiness as the ultimate objective. We are exhorted to cultivate affirmative cognition, to visualize our desires, and to banish all vestiges of negative sentiment. The implicit assumption is that a life devoid of struggle and disquietude constitutes the ideal. Yet, what transpires when we relentlessly chase positive sensations and endeavor to elude anything that evokes unpleasantness? We often find ourselves ensnared in what is termed the hedonic treadmill. Envision a hamster traversing its wheel. It expends considerable energy, yet makes no actual progress. Similarly, when our sole focus is the acquisition of greater pleasure or the avoidance of pain, we adapt to our current level of contentment and soon crave more. The allure of a new automobile dissipates, the exhilaration of a promotion becomes the mundane, and we are once again adrift, seeking the next external palliative. This perpetual chase for ephemeral positive emotions can be profoundly enervating and, paradoxically, culminate in amplified unhappiness. The transcript summary, however, directs us toward an alternative perspective, suggesting that happiness is neither the sole nor even the preeminent objective. It intimates that genuine fulfillment often blossoms from something far more intricate. This leads us to another commonplace, yet frequently misconstrued, piece of counsel: don't give a f\ck. While this aphorism, taken at face value, might suggest a posture of indifference, its authentic import, as hinted within the transcript, is far more subtle. It is not an injunction to care less about all things, rather, it is an imperative to care about the appropriate things. Traditional self-help often distorts this into a license for detachment, for emotional disengagement. The reality is that life's most resonant experiences and significant accomplishments emerge from profound engagement, from caring deeply about something. The peril lies in the absence of a clear discernment of what truly merits our attention and emotional investment. When we lack clarity on what to prioritize, we risk becoming preoccupied with trivialities or, worse, succumbing to apathy. The transcript posits that the genuine skill lies not in anesthetizing ourselves to the world, but in discerning which struggles and values are truly significant enough to warrant our energy and concern. This emphasis on prioritization, rather than indifference, constitutes a crucial key theme that conventional self-help frequently overlooks. Perhaps one of the most insidious ramifications of ill-conceived self-help edicts is the cultivation of entitlement. When we are perpetually informed that we deserve happiness, success, or good fortune without any acknowledgement of the arduous labor, sacrifice, or arduous experiences that frequently pave the way, we can develop a distorted perception of life's obligations. This is particularly evident when individuals believe they are entitled to positive outcomes without enduring any hardship. The transcript synopsis alludes to this, underscoring how a conviction of deservingness untethered from commensurate effort can engender a fragile self-concept, ill-equipped to confront life's inevitable trials. Imagine an individual consistently told they are exceptional and destined for greatness, yet never instructed on the value of persistent endeavor or the necessity of surmounting setbacks. Faced with their first genuine impediment, they might falter, not from a lack of aptitude, but because their worldview has failed to prepare them for the reality that growth is often forged in the crucible of adversity. This is where the traditional self-help narrative falters. It often fixates on the destination while neglecting the journey, and it is on the journey that true character is sculpted. The conventional approach also tends to advocate for the avoidance of negative emotions. We are advised to think positively and look on the bright side, often at the expense of acknowledging and processing difficult sentiments such as sorrow, anger, or apprehension. However, these emotions are not inherently detrimental. They fulfill vital functions. Fear, for instance, serves as a critical warning of danger, prompting protective measures. Sadness can signify loss, encouraging us to seek solace or connection. Anger may indicate that our boundaries have been transgressed, motivating us to assert ourselves. By attempting to suppress or disregard these feelings, we deprive ourselves of invaluable information and opportunities for growth. The transcript suggests that authentic personal development frequently arises from confronting and navigating these uncomfortable experiences, not from evading them. It is in the wrestling with adversity, in the endurance of suffering, that we often uncover our deepest reservoirs of strength and glean profound insights. This is a key theme that stands in stark opposition to the superficial positivity so often espoused by mainstream self-help. Let us consider the extreme illustration of Hiroo Onoda, the Japanese soldier who persisted in his guerrilla warfare in the Philippines for nearly 3 decades following the conclusion of World War II, convinced the conflict remained ongoing. He exhibited extraordinary discipline, resilience, and unwavering dedication to his mission. He meticulously adhered to his orders and endured immense privation. Yet, his steadfast commitment was to a cause that had long since lost its relevance. His efforts ultimately rendered futile and even deleterious. His narrative, while extreme, powerfully demonstrates the peril of pursuing a goal or a value without critically interrogating its validity or pertinence. He was a virtuoso of execution, but his foundational premise was profoundly flawed. This encapsulates the core problem with a one-size-fits-all self-help paradigm. It can furnish us with tools and motivation, but if the underlying values or objectives it champions are misaligned with reality or our own genuine needs, we risk becoming akin to Onoda expending prodigious effort on the wrong pursuits. The transcript synopsis challenges us to transcend mere motivation or discipline, and instead to cultivate the wisdom of choosing what to be motivated and disciplined about. The prevailing discourse in much of traditional self-help posits that the ultimate aspiration is to maximize positive experiences and minimize negative ones. This is frequently presented as the path to success and fulfillment. However, the transcript summary proposes a more complex reality. It implies that a life devoted solely to the avoidance of discomfort and the pursuit of pleasure is, in fact, a life that forfeits much of what imbues existence with meaning. Consider the notion that genuine growth often occurs when we are propelled beyond our comfort zones. Think of an athlete striving for peak performance. They must endure rigorous training, pain, and exhaustion. Or an artist who pours their very soul into their craft, confronting rejection and self-doubt along the way. These individuals are not necessarily maximizing their moment-to-moment pleasure, but they are often engaged in activities that bestow upon them a deeper sense of purpose and accomplishment. The transcript directs us toward understanding that problem-solving and the conscious choice to engage with arduous, yet ultimately valuable, struggles represents a more reliable route to a fulfilling life than the simple pursuit of happiness. This is a critical key theme that reorients our perception of what true success entails. Furthermore, the emphasis on what individuals deserve can be particularly detrimental when it severs the link between effort and reward. The transcript's summary touches upon the concept that a belief in deservingness, devoid of an accompanying comprehension of sacrifice and diligent work, can foster a sense of entitlement. This is not an argument against acknowledging people's inherent worth. Rather, it is a recognition that meaningful achievements in a life well lived are rarely bestowed gratuitously. They are typically the product of deliberate choices, persistent effort, and a willingness to endure hardship. When we are conditioned to believe that we are owed a certain level of comfort or success, we become ill-prepared for the inevitable challenges and setbacks that life inevitably presents. Instead of cultivating resilience and the capacity to surmount obstacles, We may become frustrated, resentful, or simply abandon our endeavors when circumstances do not align with our expectations. The transcript hints at sacrifice as an antidote to this entitlement, suggesting that the conscious decision to relinquish something for a loftier objective can be a potent means of fostering humility and a realistic perspective on life's demands. This understanding of sacrifice is a vital key theme for the construction of genuine character. The traditional self-help industry frequently presents a simplified depiction of human psychology, suggesting that negative emotions are to be eradicated. This perspective overlooks the evolutionary purpose and psychological necessity of these feelings. Our capacity to experience a wide spectrum of emotions, including those that are unpleasant, is a fundamental aspect of our humanity and an indispensable tool for navigating the world. When we are encouraged to suppress these feelings, we not only deny ourselves crucial information, but also potentially impede our ability to connect authentically with ourselves and others. The transcript summary appears to advocate for a more integrated approach, one that acknowledges and makes space for all of our emotions, recognizing that even the most challenging feelings can offer valuable insights and opportunities for growth. This acceptance of the full spectrum of human experience is a vital key theme that distinguishes a more profound path to personal development. In essence, the critique of traditional self-help, as suggested by the transcript synopsis, is not a summons to despair or an embrace of misery. Rather, it is an invitation to a more voracious and profound understanding of what constitutes a meaningful existence. It challenges us to move beyond superficial prescriptions and to engage in a deeper, more personal exploration of our values and aspirations. The key theme that emerges is the imperative to critically examine the messages we receive regarding success and happiness, and to consciously select the struggles that resonate with our deepest sense of purpose. This necessitates a transition from seeking external validation and facile solutions to embracing life's complexities and the profound growth that accrues from confronting challenges with wisdom and intention. The traditional self-help industry, with its fixation on universal happiness and the avoidance of discomfort, frequently fails to equip us for this more profound journey. It offers a map to a destination that may not align with our true north, and it does so without adequately preparing us for the terrain we must traverse to reach it. The insights gleaned from the transcript, however, guide us toward a more authentic and ultimately more rewarding path. 2. The role of responsibility and choice. Life often unfolds as a cascade of events seemingly imposed upon us, does it not? We encounter trials, and it is facile to feel adrift on an inexorable current, devoid of agency. The refrain "this burden was thrust upon me" or "I never solicited this" echoes with a relatable resonance. This sentiment is entirely comprehensible, for the human inclination is to recoil from pain and adversity. Yet, the transcript summary proffers a profound recalibration of our perspective on these experiences. It posits that even amidst the most formidable circumstances, we are, in every instance, choosing. This is not an indictment of self-blame for misfortunes, but rather a recognition of an intrinsic reservoir of personal power. Consider this: when a predicament descends as if unbidden, the sensation can be utterly overwhelming, even crushing, engendering a profound sense of helplessness. But what if we could reframe this challenge? What if we could perceive it as something we have, by some measure, elected to confront? This is not to suggest we willed the event itself into existence, an illness, a loss, but rather that we choose our response, the narrative we construct around it, and the significance we ascribe to it. When we internalize our struggles as externally imposed, a paralysis often ensues. We feel irrevocably stuck. Conversely, when we apprehend that we are choosing to engage with these struggles, irrespective of whether the initial catalyst was within our control, a fundamental alteration occurs. We reclaim a sense of agency. The feeling of victimhood recedes, supplanted by that of an active participant in the unfolding drama of our lives. This cognitive metamorphosis transcends mere psychological maneuvering. It possesses the capacity to profoundly influence our well-being, catalyzing a transition from powerlessness to empowerment. This tenet of always choosing stands as a key theme that permeates the transcript summary. It is an exhaustive dissection of the central premise that our perception and lived experience of existence are sculpted by our deliberate and subconscious decisions. To truly internalize this notion is to witness a paradigm shift. It implies that even in the direst of predicaments, a vestige of choice remains. This is not an exhortation to seek solace in suffering, but rather to discover fortitude and meaning through our engagement with it. Let us draw a crucial, indeed vital, distinction here: the demarcation between responsibility and fault. To be at fault is to have committed an error that directly precipitated the problem. Responsibility, conversely, pertains to embracing one's role in navigating a situation. You may not be at fault for contracting an illness, but you are responsible for its management. A natural disaster may obliterate your home through no fault of yours, yet you are responsible for its reconstruction. By embracing this responsibility, even for circumstances beyond our culpability, we reclaim our power. It represents the inaugural step toward proactive engagement and forward momentum. Assigning blame to others or to external circumstances ensnares us. Assuming responsibility, however, liberates us to discover resolutions and to cultivate growth. Envision the arduous undertaking of a marathon. For an untrained individual, this race presents an immense, almost insurmountable ordeal. Each stride becomes an agony, a form of penance. The individual might perceive the race as an imposition, a cruel test. Yet, for the seasoned runner, this identical marathon is a chosen endeavor. They anticipate the discomfort, have meticulously prepared for it, and have elected to endure it in pursuit of a valued objective. While the physiological experience may be analogous, the pain undeniably real, the apprehension of that pain is fundamentally divergent. The trained runner experiences the marathon not as gratuitous suffering, but as a deliberate struggle imbued with the promise of accomplishment. Their decision to participate, coupled with their understanding of its purpose, transforms the entire experience. This powerfully illustrates how our selection of what we deem valuable intrinsically shapes our encounter with adversity. This leads us to the very essence of a meaningful existence. A sustained sense of purpose and contentment arises not from the avoidance of difficulty, but from discerning what is worth, striving for, what holds intrinsic value, and what merits sacrifice. The transcript summary underscores that this conscious selection of our priorities eclipses any external accomplishment or conventional metric of success. If we pursue misguided objectives, even with prodigious effort and unwavering discipline, we risk squandering our potential and inadvertently inflicting harm. Consider the narrative of Hiroo Noda, a Japanese soldier who persisted in his combat duties for 29 years after the cessation of hostilities, his mission parameters never having been updated. He subsisted in the jungle, hunted, and even engaged in skirmishes, all in service of a cause rendered obsolete. His dedication, his discipline, and his sheer tenacity were extraordinary. He possessed remarkable skill and unwavering commitment. Nevertheless, he dedicated nearly 3 decades to the pursuit of a fundamentally flawed objective, a value system that had long since atrophied. Upon his eventual discovery and revelation of the war's end, he was adrift. His entire existence had been predicated upon a premise that no longer held sway. This poignant illustration underscores the devastating repercussions of dedicating oneself to an erroneous goal or value, even with the most profound devotion. It highlights that the choice of what we dedicate our lives to, what we deem significant, is paramount. Mere drive is insufficient. We must be driven by the correct impulses. It is here that the principle of the backwards law emerges, a tenet suggesting that the more ardently you pursue a desired outcome, the more elusive it becomes. If you desperately seek happiness, you may find yourself consumed by anxiety and discontent. If you perpetually endeavor to circumvent problems, you may inadvertently generate more. This law is intrinsically linked to our choices. When we elect to value the struggle itself, when we comprehend that hardship is an intrinsic component of growth and achievement, we cease our futile attempts at avoidance. By actively embracing challenges, we paradoxically draw nearer to the outcomes we desire, including a profound sense of inner peace and fulfillment. The transcript summary also addresses the insidious effects of entitlement. This is the conviction that one is inherently deserving of positive outcomes, comfort, and success, devoid of any necessity for enduring hardship or making sacrifices. It is exemplified by the Jimmy narrative, where an individual believes they are owed favorable circumstances merely by virtue of their existence or perceived specialness. This mindset is profoundly corrosive, fostering a deficit in resilience, an incapacity to navigate setbacks, and frequently detrimental interactions with others. When we operate from a place of entitlement, we fail to recognize the inherent value of diligent effort or the lessons gleaned from struggle. The embrace of hardship and sacrifice serves as the antidote to entitlement. It is through the voluntary confrontation of difficulties that we forge character, hone skills, and cultivate a genuine appreciation for our achievements. When we consciously choose to endure something arduous, be it a demanding profession, a challenging personal project, or even the simple act of rising early for exercise, we fortify our capacity for resilience. We learn that we are capable of overcoming formidable obstacles and that the effort itself possesses intrinsic worth. This is not a prescription for masochism, but an understanding that meaningful experiences and authentic growth are often discovered on the far side of discomfort. Consider the cyberstalker scenario alluded to in the transcript summary. This individual, propelled by a distorted sense of entitlement and an unyielding, unexamined belief that they were owed a relationship or attention, engaged in profoundly harmful and destructive conduct. Their perception of reality was so warped by their chosen convictions that they were incapable of recognizing the devastation they wrought or the inherent wrongness of their actions. They had elected a path of delusion, and the consequences were dire, not only for their victims, but, ultimately, for themselves. This exemplifies the extreme peril of unexamined beliefs and the potent influence of choice in shaping our reality, even when that choice leads us down a shadowed path. Thus, how does the transcript's emphasis on always choosing directly challenge the prevalent perception of life as a series of uncontrollable occurrences? It compels an inward gaze. Rather than viewing ourselves as pawns of destiny, we are invited to assume the role of directors of our own experiences. The practical ramifications for our psychological well-being are immense. When we perceive ourselves as having a choice, even within a dire situation, our anxiety and depression diminish. We become more inclined to seek solutions, to adapt, and to unearth meaning. It transforms our relationship with adversity from one of passive suffering to one of active engagement. Given the distinction between responsibility and fault, how can individuals effectively embrace responsibility for situations clearly beyond their culpability? It commences with acknowledging the reality of the situation, followed by a deliberate decision to engage with it constructively. For instance, if you receive a diagnosis of a chronic illness that is not your fault, you can choose to assume responsibility for managing your treatment, adapting your lifestyle, and discovering avenues for a fulfilling life despite the affliction. The psychological benefit of such an approach is profound. You transition from feeling like a victim of your own physiology to becoming an active protagonist in your health journey. You reclaim a sense of dominion over your life, even when the initial event was beyond your command. In essence, the transcript summary reveals that our lives are not merely a chronological succession of events, but a rich tapestry woven from the threads of our choices. The key theme of embracing responsibility and recognizing our agency is foundational. It is about apprehending that even when the circumstances are not of our choosing, our response, our values, and our aspirations are invariably our own. This constitutes the bedrock of resilience, the fount of genuine meaning, and the pathway to a life lived not by happenstance, but by deliberate design. It is a potent concept, and one that, when truly embraced, possesses the capacity to fundamentally alter our experience of the world and our place within it. Having established that our lives are profoundly shaped by the values we elect and the responsibilities we embrace, the subsequent critical juncture involves a rigorous examination of how these values are formed. This invites us to question the very essence of our convictions and the often obscured forces that mold them, thereby paving the way for a more profound exploration into the inherent fallibility of our beliefs and the wisdom embedded within the acceptance of uncertainty. 3. Dangers of entitlement and certainty. The pervasive notion that we are inherently deserving of life's finest offerings, that existence itself guarantees a seamless trajectory of success and unadulterated happiness, acts as a potent, yet profoundly deceptive, undercurrent in our lives. This conviction, known as entitlement, transcends a mere fleeting aspiration. It is a bedrock belief that favorable experiences ought to manifest without the commensurate exertion of effort or the inevitable trials that invariably accompany them. When we operate from this vantage point, we are, in essence, anticipating the world to bestow rewards upon us for the simple act of being, thereby disregarding the fundamental truth that growth and accomplishment are almost invariably forged in the crucible of struggle. Entitlement manifests in a dichotomy of forms. The first, which we might term grandiose entitlement, is the visceral sensation of being singular, superior, and consequently, meriting preferential treatment and outcomes. This is the individual who perceives themselves as predestined for eminence, anticipating opportunities to materialize effortlessly. The inverse of this is victim entitlement. Here, the individual believes they are owed good fortune precisely because of their past suffering. They may posit that their prior adversities automatically grant them respite, special consideration, or an existence unburdened by further tribulations. While these two manifestations appear disparate, they converge upon a singular point, a self-referential focus where our own perceived needs and desires ascend to paramount importance. This self-absorption can steer us toward trajectories that are not merely unavailing, but actively detrimental. It can impel us to actions that inflict harm upon others as we elevate our own sense of desert over their well-being. Furthermore, it impedes our capacity to absorb the vital lessons that emerge from confronting difficulties head-on. Instead of perceiving challenges as conduits for enhanced fortitude or sagacity, we view them as unjust impediments, thereby stifling our capacity to genuinely apprehend the requisites for success. This inclination toward entitlement is frequently nurtured by our surrounding milieu, particularly in contemporary times. Consider the pervasive influence of social media, where meticulously curated highlight reels can engender the illusion that everyone else is navigating a flawless, unlaborious existence. This incessant torrent of apparent triumph can distort our perception, fostering a sense of inadequacy should we not experience comparable perpetual victories. Consumer culture, too, plays a significant role, ceaselessly asserting our entitlement to the latest and most sophisticated acquisitions, implying that happiness is purchasable. This cultivates a peculiar empty calorie effect for our ego. The conviction of our extraordinariness and our inherent right to everything offers immediate gratification, but it lacks true sustenance. It is akin to indulging in junk food. It provides temporary satiation, but fails to deliver the essential nourishment we require. The more voracious, albeit less glamorous, reality is that life compels us to eat our vegetables, to embrace the mundane, the arduous, and the ordinary facets of existence. Authentic, enduring fulfillment arises not from the conviction that we are exempt from life's rigors, but from the deliberate choice to confront them. In tandem with entitlement often walks a perilous companion, certainty. This is the unyielding conviction that our own vantage point, our own comprehension, constitutes absolute truth and that we are unequivocally correct, irrespective of external evidence. While a modicum of confidence is indispensable, rigid certainty can erect a formidable barrier to growth. Envision an individual utterly convinced of their comprehensive knowledge on a given subject. When novel information emerges that contravenes their established beliefs, they do not engage with it. They summarily dismiss it. They are so immovably entrenched in their existing paradigms that learning or adaptation becomes an impossibility. This is particularly perilous when these certainties are predicated upon flawed or even pernicious notions. We can observe this in extreme exemplars, such as a cyberstalker who harbors batshit crazy beliefs with an unshakable certainty. Such an individual is so profoundly ensconced in their own distorted reality that no amount of logic, evidence, or reason can breach their defenses. They remain impervious to anything that challenges their worldview. This is not merely a matter of being mistaken, it is an active repudiation of truth. This species of rigid certainty can precipitate a cascade of problems, ranging from interpersonal misunderstandings to large-scale conflicts. It fosters an us versus them mentality, wherein any dissenter is not merely incorrect, but an adversary. It blinds us to alternative perspectives and cultivates an unwillingness to engage in the open dialogue essential for comprehension and progress. Why do we cling so tenaciously to certainty? Frequently, it serves as a defense mechanism for our ego, our sense of self. Our identity can become inextricably intertwined with our beliefs. When these beliefs are assailed, it can feel as though our very identity is under siege. This phenomenon is sometimes alluded to as Manson's law of avoidance. The more an entity threatens our fundamental sense of self, the more we instinctively recoil and dig in our heels, employing certainty as a bulwark. We erect edifices of absolute belief around ourselves to repel anything that might provoke introspection regarding our identity or our convictions. The poignant irony is that embracing uncertainty, rather than succumbing to its apprehension, can prove remarkably beneficial. When we permit ourselves to exist in a state of uncertainty, we cultivate fertile ground for learning. We become more amenable to novel ideas and divergent viewpoints. This inherent flexibility is paramount for personal evolution. It also serves as a safeguard against the species of extremism that germinates from rigid, immutable convictions. By finding solace in not possessing all the answers, we open ourselves to dialogue and connection. This can foster significantly improved relationships, as we become more inclined to listen and comprehend others, rather than merely endeavoring to invalidate their positions. The intricate interplay between entitlement, certainty, and our values is likewise of critical import. Our values represent the guiding principles by which we navigate life, the tenets we deem significant. When we harbor a sense of entitlement, we may espouse what could be characterized as bad values. These are values that are superstitious, rooted in unsubstantiated beliefs, socially deleterious, harmful to others or society, or beyond our sphere of control. For instance, the conviction that fortune will invariably favor us, or that we are destined for a particular outcome irrespective of our actions, constitutes a superstitious value that perpetuates entitlement. Similarly, prizing manipulation or deceit as means to attain that which we believe we are owed is socially destructive. These categories of values reinforce the notion that we are owed something and that our perspective is the sole one of consequence. Conversely, genuine well-being and a more authentic self-perception arise from embracing good values. These are values that are reality-based. They are grounded in the actual workings of the world. They are socially constructive. They benefit not only ourselves, but also those in our proximity. And crucially, they are controllable. They represent endeavors we can actively pursue and influence through our own agency. Examples include the valorization of honesty, kindness, diligent effort, and continuous intellectual cultivation. The adoption of these types of values inherently necessitates an acknowledgement of life's realities, including its inherent difficulties and uncertainties. It entails accepting that our desires are not always gratified and that our own exertions are vital. This process of selecting and adhering to virtuous values naturally counteracts both entitlement and rigid certainty. Therefore, how does our contemporary cultural landscape, particularly its emphasis on individual exceptionalism and the allure of instant gratification, contribute to the cultivation of entitlement? The psychological mechanisms at play are intricate. We are perpetually inundated with messages proclaiming our uniqueness, our specialness, and our boundless potential for achievement. While this can be empowering, it can also engender an unrealistic expectation that success and happiness should be readily accessible. Social media, in particular, functions as a potent amplifier. We witness curated renditions of others' lives, their triumphs, their adventures, their idyllic moments, and it becomes facile to fall into the trap of comparing our own reality, replete with its imperfections, to their highlight reels. This can engender a feeling of deficiency if we are not experiencing unremitting joy and success. This persistent exposure to seemingly effortless accomplishment can foster a sense of entitlement, a belief that we, too, should be experiencing such positive outcomes without the arduous, messy work that often lies concealed beneath the veneer of those polished online personas. In what ways does an unshakable conviction in one's own rectitude, this rigid certainty, actively impede personal growth and the assimilation of healthier, more reality-grounded values, even when confronted with contradictory evidence? The answer resides in the fundamental human imperative for consistency and self-preservation. When our deeply ingrained beliefs are challenged, it can precipitate cognitive dissonance and uncomfortable psychological state wherein our beliefs clash with emergent information. To resolve this discomfort, we frequently resort to denial, rationalization, or outright repudiation of the new information, rather than revising our beliefs. This is particularly true when those beliefs are intrinsically linked to our identity or our sense of self-worth. For instance, if an individual has constructed their entire identity around a particular political ideology, and they are presented with compelling evidence that contradicts a foundational tenet of that ideology, their instinct may be to dismiss the evidence as bias or spurious rather than to question their core convictions. This safeguards their ego, but effectively forecloses the possibility of learning and growth. It prevents them from embracing values that are more consonant with reality, because doing so would necessitate an admission of error and a recognition that their prior certainty was misplaced. This resistance to contradictory evidence creates a closed loop, wherein the individual becomes progressively isolated within their own worldview, incapable of connecting with or comprehending perspectives that diverge from their own. The pathway to wisdom and genuine fulfillment is paved with a willingness to scrutinize ourselves, to embrace the possibility of being wrong, and to welcome the ongoing process of learning and adaptation. The insidious ramifications of entitlement and certainty are unequivocally evident. They engender a distorted perception of ourselves and the world, thereby hindering our capacity for connection with others, for learning, and for personal growth. They steer us away from the very elements that imbue life with genuine meaning and resilience. Having meticulously examined these perils, we now direct our attention toward a more constructive path forward, the deliberate and often arduous process of selecting our values and embracing the struggles that define a meaningful existence. This leads us to the profound realization that true fulfillment lies not in the avoidance of pain, but in the judicious selection of the pain we choose to endure. 4. Embracing uncertainty and humility. Life often feels like a quest for solid ground, a desire to know precisely where we stand and what lies ahead. We construct our understanding of the world, our sense of self, and our definitions of success upon what we hold to be true. Yet, the more we learn, the more we uncover the sheer immensity of what we do not know. This book, Insights from the Transcript, has grappled with many of these intricate ideas, and as we delve deeper into the reevaluation of success and values, a crucial insight emerges: the profound power and absolute necessity of embracing uncertainty and cultivating humility. Consider, for a moment, the grand sweep of human history. For centuries, humanity held with unshakable conviction that Earth was the undisputed center of the cosmos, with the sun and stars dutifully revolving around it. This was no fleeting thought. It was a deeply ingrained truth, buttressed by observation and universally accepted by the learned minds of the age. Then, figures like Copernicus and Galileo dared to challenge this very certainty. Their nascent ideas, initially met with fierce resistance, ultimately ignited a revolution in our understanding. The Earth, we now know with profound clarity, orbits the sun. This seismic shift was not a repudiation of the past, but a monumental leap forward in human knowledge. Our current beliefs, no matter how immutable they may feel, are likely to be viewed through a similar lens by generations yet unborn. What appears as an unassailable fact today might well be a quaint misunderstanding tomorrow. This evolution of thought is not a weakness, but a testament to our inherent capacity for learning, growth, and an ever-expanding intelligence. It is a key theme of this book, the detailed examination of the central ideas and concepts highlighted in the transcript. Summary that our understanding is perpetually a work in progress. This realization directly confronts our deep-seated yearning for certainty. We often conflate certainty with safety and competence. When we are certain about something, we feel a sense of control, knowledge, and security. However, this relentless pursuit of unwavering certainty can morph into a perilous trap. When our beliefs ossify to the point of inflexibility, they can harden into extremism. Reflect on the cyberstalker encountered in the transcript, whose absolute conviction in their own righteousness fueled their destructive actions. This brand of certainty blinds us, rendering us unwilling to entertain dissenting perspectives, adapt to new information, or even perceive the harm we might be inflicting. It erects echo chambers, both within our minds and in our interactions, where opposing voices are systematically silenced or dismissed. Conversely, embracing uncertainty, while initially unsettling, unfurls a vast panorama of possibilities. It is the fertile crucible where genuine learning transpires. When we remain open to the notion that we may not possess all the answers, we cultivate a profound curiosity. We become more inclined to pose questions, to traverse diverse viewpoints, and to engage in meaningful dialogue. This fosters richer relationships because we are less prone to dogmatism and more inclined toward empathy. It allows for a more accurate apprehension of reality, as we are not filtering everything through the narrow aperture of what we believe we know. The transcript underscored how uncertainty, far from being a marker of weakness, is in fact a signal of intellectual integrity, and a bulwark against the insidious pitfalls of absolute conviction. It empowers us to navigate the complexities of life with enhanced grace and diminished rigidity. This leads us to a concept that may initially strike one as peculiar: Manson's law of avoidance. This tenet posits that the more a piece of information or a novel perspective threatens our established identity or our deeply held convictions, the more instinctively we will recoil from it. Our ego, our very sense of self, functions as a protective shield. If something assaults that shield, our primal reaction is to reinforce it, to cling with greater tenacity to what we already believe. We may dismiss the new information, meticulously dissect it for flaws, or simply refuse to acknowledge its validity. This is precisely why altering our convictions can be so arduous, even when confronted with compelling evidence. The fear of error, the dread of what being wrong might portend for our identity, becomes an formidable impediment. However, the transcript offered a pathway to mitigate this defensive posture. By loosely defining our identity, by refraining from tethering our entire sense of worth to a fixed constellation of beliefs or achievements, we diminish this desperate need for defense. If our identity is not a fragile fortress, but something more fluid and adaptable, then new information ceases to feel like an assault. It can be perceived as an avenue for growth. This is a subtle yet profound transformation. It is about grasping that our value as a human being is not contingent upon being perpetually correct. This notion resonates profoundly with ancient philosophical traditions, particularly the Buddhist concept of no self. This principle asserts that there exists no permanent, immutable, inherent self. Our sense of self is akin to a mosaic of ever-shifting experiences, thoughts, and feelings. If there is no fixed self to protect, then the desperate craving for certainty and the elaborate defense mechanisms we deploy begin to wane in their power. When we cease clinging to a rigid conception of who we are, we become less invested in defending specific beliefs as extensions of that self. This philosophical perspective champions a more detached, and consequently more humble, approach to our convictions and our identity. It permits us to regard our thoughts and opinions not as sacrosanct truths, but as ephemeral mental formations. So, how do we translate this understanding into tangible practice? How do we move from comprehending these concepts to actively embodying them? The transcript presented a series of practical inquiries designed to liberate us from rigid thinking. When we encounter information that challenges our perspectives, or when we feel that potent urge to defend our position, we can pause and pose ourselves, what if I am wrong? This simple question, when asked with unvarnished honesty, possesses an extraordinary potency. It carves a small aperture in the edifice of certainty. Then, we can venture a step further. What would it signify if I were wrong? This is where the true labor commences. We meticulously explore the ramifications. Would it mean that a cherished belief is invalidated? Would it imply that a past decision was imprudent? Would it necessitate a reevaluation of our understanding of ourselves or the world? It is here, often, that our deepest fears reside, yet confronting them is indispensable. Finally, and perhaps most critically in the context of judiciously selecting our battles, we can ask, would being wrong engender a more adverse or beneficial predicament than my current predicament? This question, directly extracted from the transcript, fundamentally reframes the entire issue. Frequently, the problem of being wrong is the ego's apprehension of discomfort, of embarrassment, or of the necessity to adapt. However, the problem of clinging to a fallacious belief, of maintaining rigid certainty in a labyrinthine world, can precipitate far greater suffering, missed opportunities, fractured relationships, and a distorted perception of reality. If perpetuating a false certainty inflicts more pain than the transient discomfort of admitting potential error, then the choice crystallizes. We can opt for the ephemeral discomfort of learning over the protracted agony of delusion. The relentless pursuit of certainty, particularly in the contemporary landscape, actively impedes genuine personal growth and the reevaluation of success. Social media, with its meticulously curated feeds and self-reinforcing echo chambers, often solidifies our existing beliefs, fostering a heightened sense of certainty while simultaneously isolating us from a diversity of perspectives. This cultivates a culture where winning an argument frequently eclipses the imperative of understanding. When success is quantified by external validation, by being perceived as knowledgeable and infallible, then the very notion of admitting potential fallibility becomes an existential threat to that success. This stands in stark contrast to a more profoundly fulfilling definition of success, one that cherishes learning, adaptability, and authentic connection. The dread of being wrong deters individuals from embracing challenges and making sacrifices. If we are irrevocably convinced of our rectitude, any challenge to our stance is perceived as an assault, not an opportunity. We shy away from situations where our knowledge might be tested, or where we might be compelled to confess our lack of complete understanding. This fear imprisons us within our comfort zones, constricting our experiences and curtailing our potential. However, by embracing uncertainty, we can fundamentally reframe these challenges. Instead of viewing them as threats to our identity, we can perceive them as invitations to learn and evolve. A sacrifice made not out of obstinacy, but out of a willingness to explore a novel trajectory, transforms into an act of profound courage and wisdom. Given the pervasive influence of Manson's law of avoidance, discerning when our ego is actively resisting a potentially valuable truth necessitates conscious exertion. It frequently manifests as a potent emotional response: anger, defensiveness, or a dismissive demeanor when a particular idea is introduced. We might find ourselves instinctively scrutinizing the opposing argument for its weaknesses, rather than making a genuine effort to comprehend it. To consciously choose to engage with this internal friction, we must cultivate self-awareness. When we detect that nascent resistance, we can pause, inhale deeply, and recall the guiding questions. What if I am wrong? And what would it signify? We can deliberately choose to listen with undivided attention, to pose clarifying inquiries, and to withhold judgment until we have truly grasped the other perspective. This is not about abandoning our own convictions, but about ensuring they are robustly grounded and amenable to refinement. By assiduously questioning our certainties and embracing the inherent discomfort of not knowing, we commence the dismantling of the rigid frameworks that have hitherto defined our success and values. This journey, however, demands not merely intellectual humility, but a profound comprehension of why we struggle and what we are willing to relinquish. This propels us toward a critical examination of our deepest motivations and the very bedrock of what we deem worthy of pursuit. Conclusion. Our passage through the transcript's foundational concepts has been an expedition into the subtle, yet potent, forces that sculpt our existence. We commenced by dissecting how the transcript distilled essential notions, and now, as our exploration draws to its close, we can perceive how these disparate elements coalesce into a resonant, guiding principle. This principle, which we have identified as the key theme, transcends mere summarization. It represents a paradigm shift in our comprehension of ourselves and the world, capable of fundamentally altering the trajectory of our lives. It is an invitation to chart a course toward a life imbued with authentic meaning, not by evading adversity, but by confronting it with resolute intention. The revelations unearthed are not merely intellectual curiosities. They furnish a navigational chart for traversing the intricate landscape of human experience and constructing a life of enduring substance. At the core of our inquiry resides a fundamental verity. Felicity is not discovered in the absence of tribulation, but rather in the manner we elect to engage with it. The transcript illuminated the backwards law, a concept that demonstrates how an excessive aversion to discomfort often serves as its most direct harbinger. It is akin to attempting to outrun one's own shadow. The more frantic the flight, the more relentless its pursuit. Instead, the transcript posits that genuine contentment arises from embracing the very struggles that resonate with our deepest values. Herein lies the profound significance of choice. We are not passive spectators in the unfolding drama of our lives. We are active protagonists. Even when ensnared by inertia, we are perpetually making choices, often beneath the threshold of conscious awareness, that articulate our values and the sacrifices we are willing to undertake. This imbues us with a profound responsibility for the architecture of our own lives. This is not an exhortation to self-recrimination for every misfortune, but rather a recognition of our inherent agency to shape our responses and to determine the challenges we will willingly confront. This stands in stark contrast to the fallacy of entitlement, a mindset that anticipates favorable outcomes without the requisite effort or struggle. Such expectations are fertile ground for disillusionment and a pervasive sense of emptiness, for it is within the crucible of effort itself that much of life's profound significance is forged. Furthermore, our perception of reality is in a perpetual state of flux. The transcript underscored the imperative of scrutinizing our own convictions and cultivating a comfortable equilibrium with the inherent ambiguity of not possessing all the answers. Clinging to ossified beliefs, often as a defense mechanism for the ego, can impede our capacity for growth. Embracing uncertainty, conversely, liberates us to be more receptive to novel perspectives and to adapt with grace to life's inevitable transformations. And when circumstances deviate from our designs, when we encounter failure, it is not an indictment of finality. Rather, failure can emerge as a formidable preceptor, particularly when we adopt a proactive stance, guided by the do-something principle, and glean wisdom from our missteps. All these interwoven strands converge to illuminate our central key theme, the deliberate embrace of meaningful struggle as the catalyst for personal evolution and the cultivation of authentic value. This is not an endorsement of masochism, but a profound understanding that the pursuits we hold dearest will, by their very nature, entail difficulty. It is about exercising intentionality in selecting our battles, recognizing that the caliber of our commitment dictates the intrinsic worth of our endeavors. The backwards law imparts the wisdom that the pursuit of effortless ease often leads us astray from true satisfaction, whereas the acceptance and conscious selection of our struggles offer a more direct conduit to a life of fulfillment. Our agency, our innate capacity to choose our reactions and to define our values, serves as the driving force behind this transformative process. By assuming ownership of our decisions, we empower ourselves to sculpt our lived experiences. This theme also serves as a potent counterpoint to the insidious nature of entitlement, reminding us that genuine contentment is the fruit of earned accomplishments, not the passive expectation of an unimpeded journey. It amplifies the necessity for intellectual humility, for the willingness to question our own certitudes and to flourish through the embrace of ambiguity. and it redefines failure not as an immutable terminus, but as an indispensable stepping stone along the path of growth. Thus, how might we commence to embody this key theme? It begins with a simple, yet profoundly transformative recalibration of perspective. Instead of posing the question, "What do I wish to avoid?" we can initiate our inquiry with, "What pain am I willing to endure for that which I genuinely cherish?" This question beckons us to gaze beyond the horizon of immediate comfort and to contemplate what truly resonates with our deepest being. It might manifest as the deliberate choice of a demanding professional trajectory, the nurturing of a challenging yet profoundly rewarding relationship, or the unwavering dedication to a cause that necessitates considerable exertion. The embrace of this theme is not a singular event, it is a continuous practice. There will be days when the allure of retreat, the siren song of comfort, or the temptation to circumvent struggle feels overwhelming. On those occasions, recall the lessons etched into our understanding that authentic growth resides on the far side of discomfort. Cultivate patience with yourself. Acknowledge and celebrate the incremental victories of choosing engagement, even when the path is arduous. The enduring dividends of living in accordance with this key theme are immeasurable. You will forge resilience, cultivate a more profound sense of purpose, and construct a life that feels both genuine and richly textured. In summation, the insights distilled from the transcript offer a potent lens through which to apprehend the tapestry of our lives. By embracing the key theme of consciously selecting our struggles, we unlock the latent potential for profound personal metamorphosis and the genesis of authentic, enduring value. It is within the willing engagement with life's inherent complexities, rather than their circumvention, that we unearth our most profound strengths and forge a path toward an existence of undeniable meaning. The journey may indeed be fraught with challenge, but it is, without question, profoundly rewarding.